There's a plant that knows something about you that you've been afraid to admit. But the reason you feel alone in a crowded room is not a flaw. It's a signal. You know the feeling. You walk into a room full of people and something tightens. Not in your chest exactly. Deeper. Somewhere behind your ribs, beneath your breath, a quiet alarm begins to sound. It says, they're watching. They're judging. You don't belong here. And so you shrink. You pull your phone out. Not because anyone texted, but because it's a shield. You smile just enough to seem fine. You laugh half a second after everyone else, because you were too busy monitoring yourself to actually hear the joke. This is social anxiety. And if you felt it, truly felt it, then you know it's not shyness. It's not introversion. It's not preference. It's a war happening inside your nervous system, between the part of you that desperately wants connection and the part that is convinced connection will destroy you. Now, 3,000 miles from any city, on islands most people will never visit, there is a plant that has been quietly solving this war for over 3,000 years. The people who drink it don't call it medicine. They call it the peace root. Its scientific name is Piper methysticum, but the world knows it as Kava. To understand what Kava does, you first have to understand where it lives. The Pacific Islands, Fiji, Tonga, Vanuatu, Samoa, parts of Polynesia and Melanesia. Places where the ocean is the highway and the forest is the pharmacy. Here, Kava is not a supplement you order online. It is not a trend. It is the single most important social ritual in the culture. Every evening, in villages across these islands, people gather. They sit in a circle, sometimes on woven mats, sometimes on bare earth. The kava is prepared by hand. A single coconut shell is filled and passed, one person at a time. And then, something happens. The first thing you feel is your lips. A gentle numbness like the plant is saying, you don't need to perform right now. You don't need the perfect words. Then, your jaw relaxes. Your chest opens. The mental noise, that constant inner narrator grading your every move, goes quiet. But here's what's remarkable. You're not sedated. You're not foggy. You're not gone. You're here. Maybe for the first time all day, you're actually here. The Fijians have a word for the state kava creates. They call it vakaturiga, which loosely translates to a feeling of dignity, calm authority, grounded presence. Not high, not low, present. In Western culture, we have only one mainstream tool for social lubrication: alcohol. And alcohol doesn't dissolve fear, it buries it. It numbs your prefrontal cortex, impairs your judgment, loosens your tongue not because you're brave, but because you've temporarily lost the ability to care about consequences. Kava does something fundamentally different. It quiets the alarm, but keeps the mind clear. And that distinction, that razor-thin line between numbness and calm, is where the neuroscience gets extraordinary. Let's go inside the anxious brain for a moment, because social anxiety isn't just nervousness. It's a full-body neurological event. It starts in the amygdala, two almond-shaped clusters deep in your temporal lobes. This is your brain's smoke detector. Its job is simple and ancient: detect threats, trigger responses, keep you alive. When you walk into that party, that meeting, that classroom, and your amygdala perceives social judgment as a threat, it doesn't politely suggest caution. It screams. It floods your system with cortisol and adrenaline. Your heart rate jumps. Your palms sweat. Your throat tightens. Your digestive system shuts down because your body thinks you're about to be attacked. And here's the cruel irony. The moment your amygdala hijacks the system, it suppresses your prefrontal cortex, the very part of your brain responsible for rational thought, social calibration, and coherent speech. So in the exact moment you need to be articulate and present, your brain makes you foggy and frantic. This is why anxious people often say, I know it's irrational, because it is irrational. But rationality is offline. The ancient brain has seized the controls. Now, enter kava. Kava contains a family of compounds called cavalactones, at least 18 of them, 6 of which are pharmacologically dominant. And what they do in the brain is unlike almost any other natural substance on Earth. First, cavalactones bind to GABA receptors. GABA is your brain's primary inhibitory neurotransmitter. It's the chemical that says, calm down, slow the signal, you're safe. This is the same receptor family that benzodiazepines target, drugs like Valium, Xanax, Klonopin, the heavy artillery of anti-anxiety medication. But here's the critical difference. Benzodiazepines bind indiscriminately. They suppress the amygdala, yes, but they also suppress motor control, memory formation, cognitive sharpness, and emotional depth. They don't resolve fear. They resolve feeling. Kava is more selective. The cavalactones, particularly kavain and dihydrokavain, appear to modulate the amygdala's threat response without significantly depressing higher cognitive function. In other words, the alarm turns off, but the mind stays on. But that's not all Kava does. Recent research suggests cavalactones also influence dopamine pathways, not in the explosive way that cocaine or amphetamines do, but gently. A subtle increase in the brain's reward and motivation circuits. And there's evidence of impact on norepinephrine reuptake, which governs alertness and focus. So the net effect is something Western pharmacology has struggled to engineer for decades. Calm without sedation. Confidence without recklessness. Presence without performance. A 2013 study published in the Journal of Clinical Psychopharmacology, a randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trial, found that Kava significantly reduced generalized anxiety with an effect size comparable to pharmaceutical interventions. Without the side effects, without the dependency. A 2004 Cochrane review of 11 clinical trials concluded that Kava extract was significantly more effective than placebo for treating anxiety. And perhaps most telling, the indigenous cultures that have consumed Kava daily for millennia show no patterns of addiction, no withdrawal syndromes, and remarkably low rates of social anxiety disorders. Think about that. An entire civilization structured its social life around a plant that makes human connection feel safe. And we structured ours around one that makes us forget what we said. But here's where the story goes deeper than neurochemistry. Because Kava doesn't just reveal how to treat social anxiety. It reveals what social anxiety actually is. And what it is a belonging wound. For 99% of human history, we lived in small groups. Tribes of 30 to 150 people. Your survival depended, literally, biologically depended, on being accepted by the group. Rejection didn't mean embarrassment. It meant death. Exile from the tribe meant no food, no shelter, no protection from predators. So your brain evolved a system, a visceral, powerful, non-negotiable system, to monitor your social standing at all times. Am I accepted? Am I valued? Am I safe to be here? That system is what we now call social anxiety. It was never a disorder. It was a survival mechanism, one of the most important your brain has ever developed. But here's the problem. We no longer live in tribes. We live in cities of millions, where most faces are strangers. We perform our identities online for audiences we've never met. We measure belonging in metrics, likes, followers, views, invitations. In our ancient threat detection system, the one calibrated for life or death tribal dynamics, cannot tell the difference between genuine social danger and a coworker who didn't smile at you in the hallway. So it fires, constantly, at everything. And what was once a finely tuned instrument for reading social environments has become a broken alarm, ringing in an empty house. The Pacific Islanders didn't know about GABA receptors. They didn't study the amygdala. They had no MRI machines, no pharmaceutical research labs. But they understood something essential. They understood that human beings need a bridge between isolation and intimacy. That connection doesn't happen by force or by accident. It happens in a container, a shared space, a shared ritual, a shared substance that says to every nervous system in the room, you are safe here. You can lower your guard. No one is keeping score. Kava wasn't just a drink. It was social infrastructure. And here is perhaps the most important insight of all, something our modern world has almost completely forgotten. Connection is not a personality trait. It is an environment. Some people appear socially confident not because their amygdala are silent, but because they have found environments where the alarm isn't triggered. where they feel claimed by a group, not evaluated by one. The Kava ceremony doesn't create extroverts. It creates conditions where the nervous system registers safety. And when a nervous system feels safe, the social self doesn't need to perform. It can just be. So what does this mean for you? You, watching this, perhaps late at night, perhaps after a day where you felt the weight of social performance pressing on your chest. You, who may have Googled, why do I feel so uncomfortable around people more times than you'd like to admit? It means this. You're not broken. Your brain is doing exactly what it was designed to do. It is scanning for belonging. It is testing every room, every face, every conversation for signals of safety or rejection. The problem is not your wiring. The problem is that the modern world has removed nearly every structure that once told your nervous system, you're in. You're one of us. You can rest now. Now, a word of honesty and nuance. Kava is not a magic cure. It is a plant with real pharmacological effects, and it deserves real respect. If you're on medication, if you have liver concerns, if you're pregnant, speak with a healthcare professional before exploring it. Traditional preparation and quality of source matter enormously. Not all Kava products are created equal. The powdered root prepared in water, the way it has been consumed for 3,000 years, is fundamentally different from concentrated extracts sold in gas stations. This is not a video telling you to replace your treatment plan with a plant. This is a video telling you to listen to what the plant reveals. And what Kava reveals is a truth as old as the roots it grows from. Anxiety is not the absence of courage. It is the absence of safety. The Pacific Islanders built their entire social architecture around this understanding. Every evening, they recreated safety. They sat in circles, not rows. They shared one cup, not individual drinks. They made space for silence, not just speech. They gathered not to network or perform, but to be together. And the plant, the quiet, unassuming plant with its thick roots and heart-shaped leaves, was the bridge between isolation and intimacy, between hypervigilance and peace, between the fear of being seen and the relief of being known. There's one more thing about Kava that feels almost too perfect to be coincidence. Kava is one of the most root-heavy plants in existence. Its power is not in its leaves, not in its flowers. It barely flowers at all. Everything valuable about Kava is underground, hidden beneath the surface, in the dark. It spends years building its root system before it's ever ready to be harvested. It doesn't rush toward the light. It grows down deep into the earth before it can offer anything to the world above. And maybe that's the metaphor we need most right now. In a world that rewards visibility, performance, constant output, maybe the most radical thing you can do is grow down. Down into your own nervous system. Down into the question, where do I actually feel safe? Down into the ancient, aching truth that you were never meant to do this alone. Not every root needs to be seen to be strong. Not every person needs to be loud to belong. Sometimes the deepest connection begins in the quietest room, with the simplest offering passed from one hand to another. 3,000 years ago, on a volcanic island in the middle of the Pacific, someone pulled a root from the ground, crushed it, mixed it with water, and offered it to another human being. And in that moment, without knowing the word neuroscience, without knowing the word anxiety, without knowing the word GABA, they said something that our modern world, with all its technology and terminology, still struggles to say. Sit with me. You don't have to prove anything. You're already enough. Maybe that's what healing is. Not a pill, not a program, not a performance. Just a circle and a root that reminds us we were always meant to be in one. The opposite of anxiety is not calm. It is connection. If this reached something in you today, if it made the world feel a little more still for a few minutes, you might belong here. Subscribe to The Plant Mind. We explore the quiet intelligence of nature and the parts of yourself you haven't listened to in a while. Leave a thought in the comments, not a performance. Just what's real for you right now. And if someone you know carries the weight of social fear, send them this. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can offer someone is the knowledge that they're not alone in what they feel. Until next time, grow slow, Grow deep.